Welcome back. We are moving on with the agenda with a panel discussion on policy making in the e-commerce sector in the region. The panel discussion will be moderated by the chief on the ICT policy section at UNCTAD, Mr. Torbjörn Fredriksson. Mr. Torbjörn, welcome. The session will also be broadcasted live on the social media channel of the Association of the Macedonian E-commerce Association, as well as on UNCTAD social media channel. I would kindly ask the tech team to share the links to Facebook in the chat section, so you guys can share it with your friends or colleagues if they want to also see the live sessions. Torbjörn will be introducing the speakers, and he will also explain the details about the panel discussion. Mr. Torbjörn, welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria. And I would like to welcome everyone to this virtual policy dialogue. It's a great pleasure for me to moderate this session, which is broadcast live, as was mentioned by Maria. In fact, over 90 women digital entrepreneurs from the region are taking part in this masterclass, originating from 7 countries: Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bulgaria, Croatia, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia. I think this is a sign that the digital ecosystem in the region is vibrant and that women are playing an active role in shaping it. During the dialogue, we will consider some of the factors that can boost digital entrepreneurship in the Balkans and how to create more opportunities for women in this context. We will hear from some of the key actors of the digital transformation in the region, from both the private sector and the public sector. During the next hour, we hope to be able to touch upon some of the main specificities of e-commerce and more broadly of the digital economy in the Balkans. We'll look at some key obstacles faced by micro, small and medium-sized enterprises in the digital sector, and especially, of course, women-led businesses. We will also consider the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. To lead this interactive discussion, I have the pleasure to welcome first, His Excellency Mr. Dirk van Kop, who is the Ambassador of the Netherlands to North Macedonia. He will deliver his opening remarks soon. Ambassador Kop is joining us from Skopje, and I'd like to give a recognition to the fact that the Netherlands is one of the 2 main donors supporting the eTrade for Women initiative. So I'm very pleased to have you on board with us today. As a second person to deliver opening remarks is Ms. Elisabeth Tuerk. She is the Director of Economic Cooperation and Trade at the UN Economic Commission for Europe. Ms. Tuerk will help us set the scene by highlighting the role of small businesses in the digital economy in the region, as well as the impact of COVID-19 on trade and e-commerce. Ms. Tuerk is joining us from Geneva. We will then hear from our 3 panelists, Ms. Majlinda Demko, who is the Senior Advisor to the Minister of Finance and Economy of Albania, and she will be joining us from Tirana. We have Ms. Nina Angelovska, who is our eTrade for Women advocate for the Balkans. She was also the former Minister of Finance of North Macedonia. In addition to that, she is the founder and former CEO of Grouper.mk. And in fact, I could mention many more things about Nina, but you will learn more from her directly. Nina joins us from Skopje. And finally, among the panelists, we have Ms. Zorana Milidrag, who is the Director of Global E-commerce at Sportvision. And she is also the President of the E-commerce Association of Serbia and joins us from Belgrade. I think digitalization shows the amazing things you can do, even though we are still in many places in lockdown mode. So with that as an introduction, I would like to now invite His Excellency Mr. Dirk van Kop for his opening remarks. Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fredriksson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Dear Mrs. Tuerk, dear Ms. Demko, dear Ms. Angelovska, dear Ms. Milidrag, ladies and gentlemen, after a period of lockdowns and restrictions we see that digital trade and digital platforms are more than ever essential for our economies and societies. E-commerce and other forms of digitalization increasingly become a powerful driver of economic growth, trade, and job creation. The Western Balkan region has experienced steady growth in e-commerce and digital entrepreneurship in the past few years, contributing to new digital business models and fostering an innovative digital ecosystem which strengthens opportunities for inclusive wealth in the region. Inspired by the European Union, citizens of the Western Balkans are from tomorrow, able to make calls, text, and surf the internet roaming free across the region. Roaming free brings the region one step closer to the Western Balkans European Union roaming charges reduction. Internet connectivity has rapidly increased. The recently published Balkan Business Barometer 2021 data showed that 89% of the population across the region currently uses internet. According to the same source, 53% of Western Balkan businesses switched to online digital services, and more than half of them did it because of Corona. On the other hand, these developments also raise questions and dilemmas on issues like security, privacy, and the protection of personal data. Our challenge is to ensure that the growing digital economy results in sustainable development, binding people, not dividing them. In this, partnering with the private sector is essential in upscaling, harnessing its power for innovation and job creation. The Netherlands encourages these trends strongly as frontrunner in the field of innovation and digital development. For us nationally, the importance of digitalization and its associated risks and opportunities and the need for e-policies are demonstrated in the Dutch digitalization strategy and the BHOS digital agenda. In our strategies for development cooperation as well as foreign trade, we are deeply involved and committed to digital initiatives such as fintech, satellite data, digital skills, blockchain, and e-commerce. These strategies begin to bear fruit. The Netherlands currently ranks second in the UNCTAD's e-commerce index, indicating the high engagement of online commerce. In 2018, my country also formed a national blockchain coalition that partners more than 20 organizations, public bodies, and knowledge institutions. By combining their strengths, they are putting us at the forefront of blockchain technology worldwide. It enables the Netherlands to remain a leading force in blockchain adaptation and development. Ladies and gentlemen, the interests of the Netherlands in the Western Balkans are simple. What we want in this region is stability and prosperity. That is why in the region we aim for membership of NATO and the European Union, and that means implementing a broad agenda that hinges on the rule of law and human rights. The essence of the rule of law is that it applies to everyone in the same way, without exception. Freedom, strong institutions, and equality before the law are the foundations of our democratic societies. Also here in the Western Balkans, that equality applies to nationality, ethnicity, religion, political preferences, sexual orientation, and of course, gender. That equality is also essential for the stable development of our digital trade policies. In the digital agenda, the Dutch Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sigrid Kaag, mentions that one of her key priorities is to make sure that women are economically empowered to take part in and reap the benefits of ICT and the digital economy. Women can play a role in the digital transformation of the Western Balkan region, yet gender bias and the lack of representation in the technological field are common challenges. The eTrade for Women is therefore an important initiative of female leaders in the digital economy to inspire the next generation and address practical problems of digital gender inequality, gender-specific issues, and concerns of women in e-commerce. It is therefore very good to see young female digital entrepreneurs during this policy dialogue today. It is also good to see my friend and advocate for the Balkans, Nina Angelovska, who has taken a central and authoritative role in the empowerment of women in digital entrepreneurship and technology in this region. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of e-commerce is promising, also given its highly increased market share since the start of the corona crisis. A good digital infrastructure and increasing cybersecurity are vital in building trust in a digitalized industry. I wish you a fruitful discussion today on the digital and tech entrepreneurship environment, as well as potential barriers and obstacles that digital entrepreneurs, especially female entrepreneurs in the region, currently encounter. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. And thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. We greatly appreciate your contribution to the dialogue. And we look forward to working closely with the Netherlands in the coming years in this area. You've been a strong gender champion in the development field, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. Let me now turn to my good friend Elisabeth Tuerk from the Economic Commission for Europe to give a snapshot of the situation pre- and post-pandemic in the region. Elisabeth, you have the floor.
Many thanks, Torbjörn. Technologically, all okay, you can hear me, you can see me. Let me start by thanking the eTrade for Women and the Macedonian e-commerce association for the invitation to be here with you at this masterclass policy dialogue today. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Ambassador Koop, Ms. Nina Angelovska, really great pleasure for me to be with you from UNECE, that's United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, and more specifically from the Economic Cooperation and Trade Division. Now, UNECE is one of the 5 economic commissions from the United Nations, and our membership really spans from North America over Europe until Central Asia. And the Balkan countries are a very important constituency for us. They're basically in the core of our region. And the issues you're addressing here today, e-commerce and digitalization, are also a very important area of UNECE's work. I think the discussions you're going to have, and you already had this morning in this masterclass, are really, really relevant. And let me flag 3 reasons for that. First of all, e-commerce can really help us. And in fact, it has already proven to help us to get to a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient post-COVID recovery. Secondly, women, they're really at the core of such a sustainable, resilient, and inclusive recovery. And today we have a wonderful group of female digital entrepreneurs, and you can be, in fact, I'm sure you already are, the driving force towards such a recovery. And thirdly, the region we are looking at, the Balkan region, is a really important region, not only for UNECE, but also globally. 30 years after the start of the breakup of Yugoslavia, it's really important to look at the region. And it's a region where trade is very important, given that it's composed of lots of small economies. So I really think that the discussions here today are very pertinent. What I would like to share with you is 2 charts from recent studies we did at UNECE, and here a big thank you also to UNCTAD for supporting us in these studies. And basically, we're going to look at 2 key messages. And the first key message, I think, Ambassador Koop, you've already mentioned it in your introductory remarks. The first key message is that for e-commerce to thrive, you need connectivity. And if we look at connectivity in the region, it has actually evolved tremendously in the recent past. And when looking at the connectivity in our chart here, we see 2 parameters. We see on the one hand, internet use, so internet penetration, and second, the use of mobile phones. On the chart, you have several of UNECE's program countries, beneficiary countries, and we have marked for you the Balkan countries in circles in the chart. And what we can see is that the countries in the Balkan, they really grew in terms of connectivity. We are comparing here 2014 to 2019 data. And we see that really the Balkan countries are on an overall very positive trend. And you can see data for Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Serbia, North Macedonia, and also Montenegro. Montenegro seems to stand out as being particularly successful, so congratulations here. And you can also see in the chart that some countries are sort of lagging behind, but these are more countries in Central Asia, so I think we can leave that out for the discussions in today's policy dialogue here. Now, this good positioning of the Balkan countries is also evident when we look at another important data source. It has already been mentioned here this morning, the UNCTAD B2C e-commerce index. And here we can see that from the 10 highest ranking transition economies, some of them are from the Balkans. And let me flag here, Serbia, North Macedonia, Moldova, and Bosnia and Herzegovina. So again, congratulations here. Now, when we also look at digital payments, and that's now some information from UNECE's new report on COVID-19 impact on e-commerce, we can see that the share of population that uses the internet to pay bills or to shop online has also more than doubled in the UNECE region between 2014 and subsequently. And like the highest increases were sometimes in countries that started from relatively low amounts, and Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of them, but they are really important and notable everywhere. But here let me flag that this shouldn't allow us to not look at the digital divide. The digital divide between countries, even in one region between countries, can be quite significant. And here, I guess, in the region, we have some front runners, like Republic of Moldova, but we also have countries that are maybe not yet as advanced in terms of digital infrastructure and use, and that's important to look at and to work towards balance and to work towards closing this digital divide. Now, if we quickly look a little bit at COVID and e-commerce, we know that businesses, in fact, around the world, but also in your region, they have all adopted new business models in the COVID crisis. And we know that there was a real increase in online sale of goods and services. And if I manage to move us to the next chart, these are two charts that are coming from a recent UNECE study where we looked at how the COVID crisis impacted end-to-end supply chains in SMEs and micro and small and medium-sized enterprises as well. And this data here, it comes mainly from surveys. So we really interviewed a large number of entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized entrepreneurs. And what we could see is that e-commerce was really a coping strategy for between 20 to 30% of the companies interviewed. So many companies really turned to e-commerce. And on the chart, we are breaking down for you sort of some of the details here. And I'll be flagging for you Serbia and Republic of Moldova, where our data is most comprehensive at the moment. And in Serbia, according to our data, we saw that around 25%, so almost a quarter of the companies interviewed, they turned to e-commerce as one of the coping mechanisms, but in different ways. And here is important to note that mainly e-commerce was used for sales to the domestic market. Yeah, and that's the large chunk of sort of like dark blue you can see in the chart. And so domestically selling was a key feature of e-commerce there. And also the companies noted that they could not rely on e-commerce for maintaining their operations overall. So e-commerce was definitely a part of their important strategies, but it wouldn't be enough to only rely on e-commerce. Now, many companies did not engage in e-commerce. Several had websites, but mainly for promotional purposes. And we also asked them a little bit why. And they gave us different reasons for why they did not engage in e-commerce. For example, some just said there is no real appetite for e-commerce in the domestic market, so flagging the power of e-commerce is definitely important. Some said that their products are particularly hard to sell, and many also mentioned the lack of financial inclusion and financial resources as a key parameter here. Now, we also have some data for Moldova. Here, e-commerce was used by more than 30% of our surveyed companies as a response to the crisis. But again, similar to what we see in Serbia, is that e-commerce is mainly happening domestically. And the largest share here in our chart, you can also see, is that it's for selling goods domestically within the country. Now, what we also learned from Moldova is that many of the enterprises surveyed, they turned to leading e-commerce platforms for beefing up their operations, and that's maybe also part of the success. In terms of challenges, they also mentioned the necessary equipment was lacking many times. They had doubts about their ability to compete in a very fiercely competed or challenged market. And they also mentioned to the myriad of different rules and regulations that make it difficult to turn to e-commerce. But I think that's some interesting findings, and overall the findings correspond to what we also saw in recent studies from the World Bank. So e-commerce is really on the growth, but many times e-commerce is being used for domestic transactions, most importantly. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, and I'm going to close in a second, we see this accelerated shift to digital platforms. Much of what is happening was spurred by the pandemic, but the pandemic also caused challenges because exporting and trade really were made difficult, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic. And so that's why facilitating trade, including through automation and digitalization, is really, really important. If we look at women, and I think that's really core focus for your discussion, one thing that springs to mind is data about the situation of women in terms of e-commerce is scarce, but generally data suggests that women are really still disadvantaged, and it's really important to look at how we can improve the situation of women, and particularly the situation of women e-commerce and digital entrepreneurs. So for the way forward, key recommendations would be to first better understand and measure e-commerce and the gender dimension here, so we lack the data. Secondly, to look at IT, both in terms of developing and improving the ICT infrastructure, and also to foster the use of advanced technologies. And I was very happy to hear the repeated references to blockchain in the ambassador's opening remark. And thirdly, to look at policies and to one hand look at the appropriate legal and regulatory framework, how to enhance, for example, consumer and business confidence in terms of also for cross-border activity, how to foster digital and financial inclusion, and how to improve trade facilitation and logistics. Those would be three policy areas to look at. In terms of constituencies, let's look particularly at the small and medium-sized companies and at the female-owned companies. And last but not least, let's look at international cooperation and regional cooperation as a way forward. And I think here again, the meeting today is a wonderful step in this direction, better understanding e-commerce, better discussing how to address gender gaps, and to do that jointly with development partners and with very, very solid and empowering entities at the regional level is really the right thing to do. And it's been a great pleasure for me to join you here for this opening segment. And many thanks again for the invitation. Floor is back to you, Torbjörn.
Thank you so much, Lisi. And the pleasure is ours. The work that you have done here to look at the impact of the COVID pandemic is extremely valuable and timely. And we have been doing this together with you and the other regional commissions of the UN under the auspices of eTrade for All, which is another initiative that the Netherlands is supporting us with. So with that as a background, I would like now to turn to the panel discussion and turn to our panelists. We'll start with the role of small and medium-sized enterprises, and especially women-led small businesses, in the regional digital transformation in the Balkans. Let me start by asking all of you to be very succinct in your answers to allow sufficient time to reflect on different perspectives. Let me start with Nina Angelovska. You are the founder of Grouper.mk, a company that is very well recognized as a game changer for the digitalization of North Macedonia. How would you say that the landscape has evolved since you started your journey as a digital entrepreneur? How would you say that Grouper.mk in this context has contributed to the digital transformation of your country? Over to you, Nina.
Thank you very much, Torbjörn. Well, I think it's an interesting parallel to make, and especially after the opening remarks and the speeches of the previous two panels, and the ambassador mentioned the Netherlands as a role model in terms of the B2C readiness e-commerce index. I would add here Switzerland as well, because they're very close in being top as the most ready countries to embrace e-commerce. And North Macedonia has made certain progress over the years if we compare at the index, but also on the ground, because the index shows how ready a country is, but then how we use this readiness and apply this in practice is up to many different other factors. So a decade ago, if we compare like the percentage of people, of internet users that were buying online, 10 years ago it was around 5 to 6%, and today we have 40% of internet users shopping online. So if we take a look at the progress made from 5 to 40, maybe that looks like a lot, but if we compare with other countries, we cannot say that we are satisfied with the progress that we have made. In particular, a decade ago, when we launched Grouper, people were not using payment cards. So this was like a very, very new topic, the e-payment itself, let alone online shopping and online selling. So if we took a look at the landscape on paper and our business plan, it's logical that most of my friends were skeptical when I said that we are going to launch the first deal platform and enter the e-commerce market, which was almost non-existent at the time. So basically, over the years, we had to create the market for ourselves. We had to educate both sides, the businesses, to start selling online, to embrace online selling. And on the other hand, we had to educate customers not only about online shopping, but we had to educate them in terms of opening email accounts, how to use their payment cards for online payments, to build their trust, basically, so that they start shopping online, and we have the base of customers and businesses so as an intermediary, so that we have the market. So I would say that the landscape has changed dramatically, but all in all, as a takeaway, I don't think that we are satisfied with the progress. We need to accelerate it. And this is why I believe that Grouper made a huge impact in terms of transforming the e-commerce market, clearing the path for many other companies, removing sort of the obstacles. But then again, we really need to accelerate and create a more favorable climate for further growth.
Okay, thank you so much, Nina. Very succinct and very rich in your answer as well. You know, one of the ideas with these policy discussions is that we mix different perspectives here. So now I would like to turn to Ms. Demko, who is really representing here the policy side. You know, SMEs are playing a catalytic role in the digital transformation of this region. And I would like to seek your experience from Albania. How do you see the impact of the COVID-19 in this context? Are you with us?
Yeah.
Hi, Majlinda.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm very pleased to be here in this event and sharing the experience within our region. Of course, in Albania and in other countries of the region, SMEs are the majority of the businesses, and the COVID-19 simply accelerated processes that had started, as Nina also mentioned, had started years before. COVID-19 crisis is a major challenge globally and regionally. In Albania also we saw an increase of the not properly e-commerce but online selling. which is a slight difference because online you can order, but there were not possible to do the payments. In order to be successful in e-commerce, you need to have proper knowledge, connection, and also payment system related to the trade. On the other side, from the policy point of view, also the government needs to pave the road for facilitating the process of e-commerce. Which means, as it was mentioned earlier, trade and transport facilitation is very important. We have a lot of projects in Albania up and running. The purpose of those projects is to facilitate exactly the trade on the border. The majority of the sales have been within the country's domestic sales, exactly because we need to fasten the process of cross-border transactions. I can mention in Albania custom paperless process. I can mention here we have also a project which is named Trade Transport Facilitation, Single Window for the Custom. All these processes need to facilitate the process for the SMEs. Connectivity also is very important. That's why in Albania last year in June, we approved the strategy for the digital strategy. And still we are working on digital skills, which goes hand in hand with each other in order also to prepare adequate staff for SMEs. I can mention later on much more initiatives that are related to this stage of development of our countries. COVID-19 also, it was not only a challenge for our economies, but also is an opportunity because we need to attract nearshoring projects. We need to work together in the region for increasing value chains. We need to work together on sustainable development in our region. The whole region is small compared to the whole Europe. Creating policies to facilitate the processes for SMEs will make them enter in a bigger market like Europe and even further.
Thank you so much. I think what you're saying resonates very well with what we're seeing around the world, actually. It's not surprising that we have seen mainly domestic e-commerce to grow because of the travel restrictions and the disappearance of many airlines during this period of the COVID crisis. And I think you also point to the importance here of no matter how good we have, how good entrepreneurs we have in a country, they are operating within an ecosystem that has to be fostered by the government. And you pointed to so many different aspects of that ecosystem that we need to get back to in a little bit to talk about the policy and regulatory environment. But before doing that, I would like to turn to Zorana, Milidrag, and ask you what you see as the main obstacles for women entrepreneurs that are trying to grow their businesses in the region and especially in your country. From your perspective also, do you feel that COVID-19 have made things more difficult or perhaps presented new opportunities that was alluded to by Ms. Demko? Over to you, Zorana.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for being here and talking and hopefully inspiring those ladies that are listening to us. Definitely when I see all these ladies in in this event, there is a huge opportunity for the women in digital. And I can say I was listening to the introduction and how many women are in our business, but I have to tell you that being on the position of Association of Serbia in front of the other guys, because all the board is basically set up by the men. I'm the only lady, and I'm the one in charge, to say like that. But to be honest, sometimes we are mixing IT with the digital business. And why I like e-commerce and the digital business is basically it is so straightforward. And if you are good in analysis, if you are good in problem solving, which is really common for the women, I can say that you can be definitely good in e-commerce and in digital business. That's why previously we had a lot of men in the digital business, because we thought it's about technology, it's about development, and nowadays, especially last few years, and maybe the COVID was the one helping that, we realize it's about the problem solving, about the marketing, the sales, understanding the people. So now you'll have a lot of women in the digital business, especially in Serbia. We, as association, we have the e-commerce academy as well, where we have more students that are women than men. So it really encourages me that we are going to have much bigger population of women in this industry. And I think it is also really important, because if you look at the IT, where you have developers, mainly men, and they really need women. So hopefully we will create this one ecosystem where we are going to have both genders. And when you look at the IT in the following years, I really believe we are going to have a much better situation there. So I think that the biggest obstacle was in our mind, where we thought, okay, that is not for me, and because it's IT, it's something with it has something to do with the tech. So with this kind of the conference and advocacy of all the people today here, we can have much more women in the e-commerce, in the digital business, because I believe that is natural for them, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's a very encouraging comment, and I think this is exactly what underlies the whole idea with the eTrade for Women initiative. We see that there's tremendous potential, but we need to work together to change perception and raise the awareness about what can be done in this field, what the potential is here. So very good. Let's turn to this question of policies and regulations, because they do matter a lot. And they matter in every country. And I would like to go back to you, Majlinda, and ask, because you are just to remind us that you are advising the Minister of Finance and Economy in your country in this area. So I would like to hear a little bit more about the kind of measures that your government has promoted to adapt the policy and regulatory environment in Moldova to the needs of Albania, to the needs of digital businesses, because I mean you have a need to help all kind of small businesses, but specifically the digital businesses. How have you tried to tackle that?
Albanian government is leading by example, which means that since January 2020, the services that Albania government is offering and all the national agencies are offering online services. And as we speak now, this is a process that is continuing, and it started despite the COVID-19, and we were lucky in a way that we had started this process. A part of being itself an example, also we had started to work on different legal aspects, which, as you rightly mentioned, the business has the eyes towards us, waiting for us to lay the roads for them in order to engage in this digital business. As I mentioned before, we had approved in June 2020 the digital strategy, which has to do with the infrastructure of the digitalization and also still working on digital skills. Our vocational educational training is focused also on the digital skills. It is true that in the business, it's not only IT knowledge, it's much more, it's business per se knowledge, but also basic knowledge on IT play an important role when we speak about the digitalization. A part of the projects that I mentioned, we approved last year, and we are still on the process of approving other legal aspects and regulations related to very important laws, which have to do with capital market development, because for the startups, for the young entrepreneurs, for digital business, you need money. And you need a market that can provide such resources. This is not very cheap kind of business. We approved last year also financial services on distributed ledger technology, or blockchain as differently known. Also collective investments undertaking law. The law on payment services for creating instant payment platform. And in the project that is in the region where all countries are participating, which is led by CEFTA and RCC, we are working towards a common regional market. We have a clear action plan there, how to make our region one market. All these aspects, policy aspects, are there to help the business. There is another law on that will help SMEs to participate in the public procurement processes. We have also, I know that in Macedonia, for example, these are very successful, and we are working, taking this example from Macedonia towards the technological, economical development areas to provide their innovation hubs in order to improve the support for businesses in order to achieve their goals. All these are not particularly, let's say, directed for the women entrepreneurs, but of course, based on their creativity, problem solving, as it was mentioned by Zorana, I'm sure they will find themselves, as they are now doing, find the way to engage much more in the future in this business, let's say.
Thank you so much, Majlinda. Maybe you made references to North Macedonia, and Nina, before you became a pure entrepreneur again, you did wear the hat of being the finance minister of your country. So does this, what Majlinda was saying, does it resonate with you? Did you take similar actions in North Macedonia to cope with the crisis and help the e-commerce field?
Yes, I think every country did what they thought it was the best in terms of navigating through the crisis with the limited resources and limited fiscal space we had, in particular as a country. When I joined the Ministry of Finance, I sort of committed that I will try to induce the passion about digitalization and the speed of the private sector to the administration. And of course, after 3-4 months since I joined the government, COVID came, and it even emphasized more the need to digitalize the processes and everything in the private sector, in the government, and the need for holistic approach and working together. So I think that, for instance, when we were designing the measures, because basically I co-designed almost all of the measures that were introduced during my mandate, And I tried to take a more systematic approach in terms of the design of the measures, regardless if they were directed to digitalization itself. So for instance, with one of the measures where we were giving assistance to vulnerable groups and people, we changed completely the way the processes worked when measures were implemented. Like, people did not have to go to the institutions, did not have to file applications, but we tried to debureaucratize and digitalize the whole process, so it's automated and people get the assistance automatically on their payment card so that they spend it on the affected sectors. And by this, we also impact the gray economy and we impact the cashless society, the vision for cashless society. But if we're speaking about concrete measures where we could say digitalization and e-commerce assistance to the private sector, there was one measure that the Fund for Innovation and Development introduced that was to help businesses digitalize sort of their processes, because everything during the lockdowns, of course, were shut down. This was in favor, in fact, of the e-commerce, because the government brought measures that people can shop online and can pick up things and have things delivered. And other measure, which is in favor of e-commerce, digitalization, and women, was the interest-free grants that were implemented by the Development Bank of North Macedonia. The companies were getting 30% grant of the whole loan if they use the money for digitalization of current processes, if they used for e-commerce, or if the business was founded or led by a woman. So basically, I think that we try to do this to implement the positive, let's say, discrimination in favor of digitalization and making businesses more competitive for after COVID times. But all in all, the crisis showed that you cannot digitalize like this when a crisis comes. You need to do your hard work and preparation beforehand. And developing countries and our country and the region, I think that we were not that ready or able to capture on the opportunities. We did the best we could, but we could have been much more prepared. Yeah. So I think now we're speeding up, and this is the time for the digital economy.
Yeah. Now that is the challenge, isn't it? Everything moves so fast that we have to be very agile and look for ways to accelerate. You know, it's always the problem that when you're having fun, time is flying very fast. So we have actually, we're approaching rapidly the end of this session. And I would like to end actually by asking all of you to think from the perspective of the private-public collaboration here, a dialogue, what you think is the most important, what can be done even better from your perspectives. And I would like to start with Zorana here. In maybe in a minute, if you could give us your most important message here to foster this interaction between the women digital entrepreneurs and the private sector more generally and the government. Zorana.
Okay, since I'm working really closely to the government through the e-commerce association, while on the other side I'm someone really deep dive into the business, so I can confirm that basically we had a group working together 2 years ago on the new law in the Serbia regarding the e-commerce. So we put all the changes regarding the web shop, regarding the pricing, different selling to the cross-border, which was really important for us to put that in the law. So I think it is really important to have that agile connection between the government and the government policy and the business, and that is something that is actually happening here in Serbia. So we have that close connection, and I believe what is really important, especially for this group today, is, and Majlinda mentioned that a few times, the CEFTA agreement, because I believe that the true expansion is going to happen the day when we have the proper CEFTA agreement regarding the digital and the e-commerce, and especially in terms of logistics and the customs. So as soon as we make it happen to the CEFTA to have the proper logistics between our countries and the proper custom agreement, we are going to have the huge impact. impact on the e-commerce development and growth.
Okay, but in the case of Serbia, when you are interacting with the government from the perspective of the associations, I'm sure you have a long list of wishes that you would like the government to do and so on. But to what extent do you actually have space for advocating the role of women entrepreneurs in your sector?
Yes, we do. And to be honest, we have our Ministry of Trade is women. We have the whole team there of women. We have people in association that are women. So we are trying all to advocate that part definitely. And we also have the new board of the led by our Prime Minister, which is also women, and so there is a chance for us to propose all the projects, which I think it is very important. So we are involved in both proposing, then the pushing or whatever I can say, and then the finalization and implementation. Because at the end of the day, we are the one close to the customers, and we know what is important for them.
And you feel that the government is listening?
Yeah, they prove they do, because we had new law 2 years ago from now, and I can tell you they were listening to me. I was loud, to be honest, but they listened to me, and they put some changes, and they accepted the changes.
Very good.
So I can say that at least for our government at this moment, and our ministers are listening.
Very, very good. Majlinda, how does your interaction with the private sector, with the e-commerce community really work in practice? Do you have any mechanisms set up for this dialogue?
Transparency and consultation are mandatory for all the laws and regulation. We skipped a bit during the pandemic due to the emergency, because at this period when the different measures were taken, the speed was more important than the involvement of the stakeholders, but this was just temporary. While normally, anytime that we draft a new law and regulation, we are obliged to discuss it with stakeholders, and we have existing platforms of discussion, which are Chamber of Commerce, different associations, Investment Council that is sponsored by EBRD, and other platforms. And we are...
Sorry for interrupting, Majlinda. Is there an e-commerce association also in Albania?
Not yet. It was a discussion for creating an e-commerce association. It is in our action plan for implementation of e-commerce, and is going hand on hand with resolving technical problems. As I mentioned before, instant payment system, which is missing in Albania, and is part of action plan, national action plan, and part of the CEFTA action plan for the e-commerce. But I would be happy to know that in Albania we will have soon an e-commerce association.
And I think they would be useful, because you see that in a number of countries where you have it, and that it becomes a very good sounding board for the government when it tries to adapt the policies and regulations to this area. Thank you very much, Majlinda. Finally, Nina, I would like to tweak the question a little bit here. You, of course, also represent the e-commerce association in Macedonia, but in the fact that we are now in the context of eTrade for women here, I'd like to hear your perspective on what role do you see that you as an advocate and the eTrade for Women initiative as such can really contribute to foster this kind of dialogue that we are trying to promote in this particular session?
Yes, I can agree on the previous question. Just one brief comment with Zorana and Majlinda, and I think that we should use the advantage of being a small country where you can easily reach the government, the ministries, have an open dialogue, and particularly after being in the government, I can say that chambers and associations and all sorts of organizations have a seat at the table, really. They are affecting, for instance, the measures that were designed were given for opinion to these associations so that they give their comments. And this is the process and an inclusive process that we need. But of course, we also need a more active role of these associations, like regardless if it's about e-commerce or other topics or women, because telling that something is a problem is not enough. You have to come with a solution and a proposal how this should be solved. We are not saying only this law needs to be amended, but we say this and this and this article needs to be like this because of this and this. So when associations and organizations come with those proposals, they are much more easily to be pushed and implemented. And in terms of women, of course, and their role and the eTrade for women, of course, it's an honor for me to be an advocate for the second mandate. But it's also a great commitment, as you said, to, I've always been trying to impact, mentoring women, talking, giving advice. I've always felt that rewarding feeling when I got messages from women and entrepreneurs in general that I've mentored or encouraged to take a step or to aim higher. And this is an amazing feeling and a motivation when I'm giving energy and I see that it has changed something. I'm even more motivated to push for more and to give more. And this is actually the program, the eTrade for Women. I see it as an opportunity to impact on a bigger level, on a bigger scale, regionally, but also more, as a sort of the term is actually now role modeling, but in fact, women need to see other women who have walked the walk. And I hope that Zorana here as well and Majlinda and we don't need celebrities or big people to be our role models. We can find a role model or a mentor in many people around us. And I really hope that these women who are listening today, 100 digital entrepreneurs from the Balkans, will be inspired and will inspire somebody else, because at the end of the day, it's like the domino effect. We need to transfer and give to feel good and to make a change. So I hope that I will impact in terms of capacity building with masterclasses and other events like this. I hope that I will encourage other women to be braver and to aim higher and to push for changes to take their seat in the policy-making dialogues as we are discussing now on this topic, and to see the change that we want to see actually. We need women to take a more active role, and this is why eTrade for Women is empowering and fostering and giving wings, trying to do that at least.
If I just can add, sorry, just a
okay, quickly.
Because I met Nina 4 years ago, something like that, in UNCTAD actually, and
it was during the e-commerce week in Geneva.
Yeah, during the e-commerce week, and I can say that she, even though she's younger than me, she truly inspired me, and she really had a huge impact of creation of e-commerce association of Serbia, and she helped us a lot. And when I saw her there working so much, all the time listening and working, I was like, okay, I have to work even more, and it is possible to achieve everything. If she achieved that in North Macedonia, we have to do something in Serbia as well. And also we are always getting the calls from Bosnia, from Albania to help them. And I can say we are trying to help each other because it is the only way possible. And everything that Nina said, I can tell you from my experience that is totally true, even though she doesn't want to say that for herself. But I can say because she made a huge impact on me as well.
Thank you so much, Zorana. And I'm sorry we are running out of time, but we have to close. But before closing, I would like to thank all the speakers for your excellent contributions. I really learned a lot from your comments. As we heard, the Balkan economies are getting more and more digital. Yet many efforts are still needed, I think, to build an enabling policy and regulatory environment for digital businesses, including women-led ones. We heard some interesting experiences in leveraging the private sector's contribution to address the challenges brought about by COVID-19, which is not yet over. And we also learned about some positive experiences to help women be at the forefront of the digital transformation. Let me say that I hope that this dialogue has offered you some interesting insights. For UNCTAD, it's very important to foster better interaction between policymakers and the private sector, and in this particular case, women digital entrepreneurs, in order to build a better dialogue and a better understanding of each other's roles and needs. We think these kind of efforts are needed to enable women digital entrepreneurs to contribute even more to building a thriving and resilient digital economy here in the Balkans. Let me also thank again Ambassador Kopp and Ms. Tuerk, as well as all of you who have attended this session. And with those comments, this webinar is concluded, and I look forward to further discussions in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.